Lisa,
Yes, baby girl.
when I grow up, I want to be a woman to society.
Then so shall you be. Hey, this is Lisa Landry with Romenace to Society. Welcome back. I am speaking today with a person who's very knowledgeable about Bitcoin, very enthusiastic to share it with y'all. Please welcome to the podcast, Truth Raider.
Hey, good to be with you, Lisa.
How'd you get involved in Bitcoin, and what is it exactly? Because I can't figure it out.
So basically, I got into Bitcoin in around 2017, and I was introduced to it in Jacksonville, Florida. At the, I learned about it. You've probably seen them, the ATMs around. I think you're in Vegas. They probably have a few ATMs that you've walked by somewhere, and it says, "Hey, we sell Bitcoin." And so that's kind of how I got introduced to it, hearing about it, and then actually, learning how to buy it from an ATM in Jacksonville. That's kind of how I got into the whole space.
I had no idea that you could buy Bitcoin at an ATM.
Not at a regular ATM, but there are, throughout the country, there are Bitcoin ATMs. That's not the main way people typically buy it. Most people typically will buy it on an app. Like one of the companies that does it is Square or Coinbase. A bunch of different companies sell it on apps now.
What made you purchase it? Why were you into it?
Because it's very interesting. You can send, like if you're trying to, let's say you have a friend that lives in Mexico or Canada or something. You know how like with wire transfers they'll charge you $30, $40, $50 to transfer money? Mm-hmm. You can do it instantly using your phone without having to. It'll do it within a few minutes, and the fee is really low. It's almost nothing, and you don't have to wait 3 or 4 days for a wire transfer. So that's one of the first reasons I kind of got into it. I was like, you can be anywhere on the planet and send money to somebody within a few minutes without having to use a bank. So that's one of the fascinating aspects of Bitcoin.
So if you want to send money to somebody via Bitcoin and they don't have to have a bank account, you can just send it from your own personal account to them directly over a phone?
Yeah, you can download from the App Store. You can download different wallets. It's kind of like having a virtual wallet as an app in your phone, and people can send Bitcoin to you. A lot of artists use it to get people to fund them. A lot of it's an easy way to send money to somebody and support them, or to transact without having to have a bank account or use money and everything. So it kind of opens up a more accessible way to share and to send and transfer money as well.
I'm really ignorant about this entire concept, to be quite honest with you. I've tried. I've watched shows about it, and it still kind of eludes me. Wouldn't the banks get kind of annoyed about this, though? Because doesn't it seem like you're cutting out the banking process?
Yeah, that's 100% true. So I use a bank. It's called USAA Bank. It's the bank that I go through. Basically, it's a bank for veterans or whatever. So they actually have on their website, you can link your Bitcoin account to your bank account. So which is kind of crazy. And a lot of the Wells Fargo, I think, and some of the other bigger banks are doing it to make it easier for people. But for somebody like you who's really new to it, the first step that I tell people, because it's simple, is to just download an app called Coinbase. That's the easiest way to study and learn it and to get into it without really having to think too much. So that's kind of the way. That was the second place I bought Bitcoin. First was in an ATM, and then the second place I bought Bitcoin was in an app from the App Store called Coinbase.
So what are some other advantages to Bitcoin besides being able to just instantaneously send money to somebody?
The other thing that's really interesting with it is it's also used as kind of a hedge against the dollar, because the dollar has decreased in value since the late 20s. It's just slowly decreased in purchasing power, and Bitcoin is doing the opposite. The price and the value of Bitcoin continues to rise year after year. So it's an investment side. It's a transactional thing for sending money back and forth, but also some people like me and others believe it's also probably the best investment for millennials and a better alternative to stocks and bonds and all that other stuff.
So what you're saying is, no matter what the dollar trades for or is valued at, you have the face value of what you thought you had at the time that you deposited the money?
Yeah, so Bitcoin price goes up and down, and right now, if you look at today versus a year ago, the price is lower than it was a year ago. But if you look over, you tell people is if you look over 5, 6, 7 years, the value of Bitcoin has grown an unbelievable amount, and so it's not a short-term thing for a lot of people. You have to stay with it for years. It's a very volatile currency because it's new, you know. So it moves a lot. But people like us, like for example, just 2 days ago, the Argentinian peso dropped to 60. It went from like 35, 40 pesos to 60 pesos to the dollar in a matter of like a few days. It just completely collapsed. And so a lot of people like me and others believe that compared to the dollar and other regular currencies, we believe Bitcoin long term is a better option for the average person.
What happened in Argentina? Do you know? Why would their money drop so quickly?
They have a lot of debt. It's not, and a lot of the reasons why Argentina and other countries, their currencies are collapsing is just too much debt to pay off, and because of that, they have to keep devaluing their currency. So when that happens, people in places like that, they look for alternatives, like Venezuela, Argentina, and other countries. They look for a way out, and there's only a few places you can put your money where it's going to preserve its value. You have gold, you have Bitcoin, and you have property, real estate. Those are the only 3 places you can really put your money, and the U.S. dollar. So that's kind of why people like us are pretty strong advocates of Bitcoin as well.
I remember watching something on Netflix, and if you don't remember your password, you're screwed. You can't get back into your account. Does it still work like that?
Yeah, and so that's accurate. And there's a few ways to store it. One, you can buy different devices to store your Bitcoin on, and I own a bunch of them. But the Trezor is one, Ledger, and it stores the Bitcoin on it. And then also you can buy, basically it's a phrase of words that if you forget those words, those phrases, then yes, you lose your Bitcoin. So you have to store the words as well as the address for the Bitcoin. If you don't do that, then you're right, you'll lose it. So that's why new people have to remember that when they're buying Bitcoin, is you have to be careful to pay attention to that.
Why do you think they did that? What is that safeguard? It's so extreme.
To protect. It's kind of like by having the phrase. Basically, what it does is, let's say somebody knows your address for your Bitcoin that you own. If they know your address, and if there wasn't that security mechanism, they could steal it. So what this does is it's like an added layer of security to where there's no way to take your Bitcoin unless they can figure out your private keys and the phrase. And it's almost impossible to figure it out just by guessing. You would have to know it basically. It's called cryptography essentially, and it's what's used to back up the physical address essentially.
I'm hearing this, and in my own financially ignorant, technologically challenged mind, I'm just thinking of, this sounds like a video game. Somebody came up with a concept for a video game where you got to keep the pirates out, and so you have this big phrase or something. I don't know.
Well, the good thing is, like what you just said is actually very good, because a lot of the people that are starting to use it, it's actually is the gamers, people that play video games and stuff. So they're kind of leading the way on this in some ways, because to them it makes sense for them. Because I don't know if you have little nieces or nephews or that play on even an iPad or something, where you can put Apple money, into the game. Like they'll have like an iPad, and instead of buying the game, you can purchase more stuff inside the game for using your Apple ID. And I think probably the same thing with an Android phone.
Sure.
But so basically that's kind of like the newer kids and the younger generation kind of understand Bitcoin because they're already using products that do that through Apple Pay and everything. So it's kind of the next generation already gets Bitcoin. To be honest, I mean, they don't get it, but it's easy for them to grasp it because of they're always using it, the technology.
You just call me old, but sort of not old because I kind of figured out the the foundation.
No, I'm talking about like I'm 36.
I'm busting on.
I'm 36, and I think 12-year-olds probably understand the use of it more than me being 36 because they get it. You know, little kids understand this for some reason. You know, like it just makes more sense to the young kids.
Yeah, they're like technologically wired. No, I agree with you completely. I've had my son tell me like, I hate you, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm like, all right, well, can you this is a new phone. Can you not hate me for 5 minutes so you can explain how I can find my mail? You know, you can give a kid a phone, seriously, and they will find different things. What is that? Do you think that we're just evolving as a species as we get more tied down to this technology that is awesome and we need, but do you think that younger people are kind of picking up a different way to connect with technology because the older people have been doing it now for a few decades and it's just coming more easily to them through evolution?
Probably. I mean, it seems more natural to them. You know, I see parents that give 5-year-olds like iPads and the kids just go to town on it, you know, like it's nobody's business, you know, like they just understand it. So I think it's possible. I mean, the next generation seems to figure out technology a lot faster than in the past. At least it seems like it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, I think my brain's a little burnt too from having to remember all these different passwords and changing them all the time and new passwords and all these different places that we have to log in. So it sounds really good that they do have a phrase that's linked to your account to sort of help you and guide you. And it's still not without the realm of what you're doing to get into your email, kind of, sort of.
Yeah, they have a way. It's a backup basically. If so, let's say you have the app on your phone, like a good example, and you accidentally delete it or lose your phone or something. If you have your phrase, you can get your Bitcoin back. All you have to do is it's kind of like doing a recovery for a computer. Mm-hmm. You just type in the phrase and then there you go, your Bitcoin's there again. So it's kind of it's a backup for people that make mistakes and something goes wrong.
Okay, so this is going to sound really cynical, but I've been around a lot of wicked people. What if you get abducted and somebody puts a gun to your head and makes you give up your phrase so that they can get into your Bitcoin account?
I think it would be the same as if they wanted to get into your ATM or checking account or wanted you to do a wire transfer. I think it's the same.
Do you have any insurance though? Like if something like that happens, where do you go?
I think some of them are. I think some new companies that the whole concept of insurance is new to the Bitcoin space. It's a new concept, but they are coming out with what it's called is custodial Bitcoin. And what that is, and I'm not really a huge fan of it personally, but for some people, what it means is like a company will store your Bitcoin for you and they'll insure it. So that way it's being maintained, stored, and insured. So that way, kind of like what you're saying, it's somebody else is managing it for you and protecting it. So that is something coming out. However, it's not my preferred way of doing it. I'd rather just kind of do it myself.
Well, that is that's like the bankers getting involved and the insurance companies getting involved, right? They have to get in there somewhere. But you also have to recognize people are vicious. People can be targeted. So that'd be weird.
So that's really good that's something good for people that have a lot of assets and it's a good or just people that want to protect it. That's a good point, and it's coming out. That's something that's new that's being brought up now is as companies start getting into Bitcoin, big companies, that's something they're going to start offering because some people will just say, yeah, I want to buy Bitcoin, but I don't want to manage it. You know, there are going to be people that they just want the benefit and they don't want to deal with the day-to-day. And it's reasonable. You know, like think of people that buy stocks, right? Mm-hmm. Or mutual funds. The average person that buys a mutual fund doesn't care about the mutual fund. They just want the return, you know? Whatever the return is.
So where do you see Bitcoin going in the next 5 years, besides this new custodial type stuff that's happening?
I think personally, I believe it's going to replace a lot of fiat. I think it's going to be the currency in the future. I think it'll be the equivalent at a minimum, in my opinion, of it'll be like having, you got the dollar, you've got the British pound, you've got the Chinese yuan, I think, and then you'll have Bitcoin. It'll just be another one of the major currencies, I think, in 5 years, 10 years. It'll just be one of 5, 6, 7, 8 out there.
And then it'll all trade at the same. It'll trade at the same value.
No, I think it's going to keep going up, but I think it's just going to be respected at the same level. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
In 5, 10 years, to where people are like, oh yeah, what do you have? I have Bitcoin, I have British pounds, I have, whatever. It'll be at that same, it'll be normalized, I think, in 5 or 10 years.
And what's one of the things that you would change, if you could change anything about it, because you are using this and you know the system?
The one problem right now is it's a little bit slower. They're trying to fix the speed for transacting. For me right now, it's fine. Like, let's say you go and you're trying to buy something. It's kind of slow right now. It's not fast as far as doing the transfer, right? Mm-hmm. But they did that on purpose because it's more secure, because it has to confirm the transaction a certain amount of times before it says that it's valid, basically. And it's a little bit slow in 2019, but there's some technologies out there to make it a lot faster, essentially. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the biggest hurdle right now for Bitcoin, is it's not super fast.
So you would think they'll get that resolved. Is everything? Aren't we going to 5G? Isn't that what we're doing, where everything's gonna be faster?
Yeah, and it's gonna. There's just the way it's designed is it's not super fast. So there's really the smartest people in the world are working on that right now, trying to figure out how to make it move quicker. Because right now it takes a few minutes to transact with Bitcoin. It's not like immediate. But that's a security reason. They do that on purpose right now. Mm-hmm. So they need to figure out and they are trying to figure out how to make it move quicker. And then once they do that, I think it's going to be more people will use it. A lot more people.
So if somebody doesn't have any idea where to start, they should go to the sites that you've mentioned. They should check out the places that you are telling us about, yeah?
Yeah, if I didn't know anything about Bitcoin and I just wanted to go buy $5 worth, I want to go spend $5 on Bitcoin and just try it out, the first place I would go would be to Coinbase.com. That's the easiest way for an American to go, or Canadian or whatever, to go and buy a little bit of Bitcoin and do a little bit of research and just test it out. That's the easiest way to do it. And right now there's about 30 million people that use Coinbase. It's the biggest company right now that trades Bitcoin.
So is that 30 million in America, or is that 30 million globally?
Throughout the world.
Wow.
Yeah, but I'm not sure all the countries they work in. Mm-hmm. I'm not 100% on that, but there's about 30 million people have used their site. There's lots of other ones out there. They're not the only one. Cash App is a pretty popular one that people use. You can use Cash App as well. But for a new person, Coinbase is the best place to just try it out, I think, out of all of them.
I'm really glad that you would come and be my guest. Thank you so very much for explaining Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're welcome, for sure.
Thanks, y'all, for listening. Please come back to next Womanist Wednesday. You can find me on my website, lisalandry.com. Shout out, Ari. I love you, little boo-boo.